So now we are saving a treat to the last, and this is the part of the program where one wants to be alert. I appreciate the fact that you've taken in a lot of information, but I hope you've felt that there's been sufficient time to jump up and grab something to eat or drink. It's my distinct pleasure to introduce two very great local experts in pitching books. So as we're nearing the end, we've asked Saffron, Beckwith, and Peter Hillfield to be quite comfortable and conversational as they share some tips on selling books. These two great individuals work here in Toronto, so they're often selling your books. So this is a case of listen and learn, and they've decided to forego the table and use this podium. So we'll just make sure that we've got sound that works for Gary, and I'll get you water. And you've got a spell here, okay? So do you want to just speak into the mic for him?
Hello.
Does this work?
Yes.
How about now?
Okay, so I'm going to put one here, unless you want yours on this side. Oh, you've got yours there. Okay.
Thanks very much.
Okay, there we go.
Hi. Thank you very much for having Peter and I here. This is really exciting to see all of your lovely, beautiful, and still awake faces. So my name's Saffron Beckwith. I represent many of you guys here, as does Peter, and we're going to just talk a little bit about how we sell. We sell in Canada, of course, and hopefully there's some great takeaways you can get from what we have to say. So I run a company called Ampersand. If you don't know, we just had our 60th anniversary last year. Woo! We're very excited about that. And we sell lots of amazing Canadian publishers, international publishers, academic publishers, literary publishers, lots and lots of different kinds of publishers. And we're a commission sales agency, much like Canadian Manda, who Peter works for.
Right, and I am Peter Hillfield. Again, I know a bunch of you in the audience, but for those that don't, or that I don't, I'm the sales director and partner at Canadian Manda. Like Saffron says, we should have consulted a bit more. We're a sales group that represents both Canadian and international publishers across Canada. Oh, sorry. To pretty much any and every account that will buy books in this country. I've been with the company for about 20 years. We just celebrated our 40th, and I've sold to all manner of bookstores, specialty stores, chains, what have you. So in preparing for this, I thought a lot about the pitch, the power of the pitch. And I think both Saffron and I agreed that regardless of whether you are selling to a store or pitching the media, or in this case, selling or pitching rights to foreign publishers, the main principles are still going to apply. We're all selling. The landscape might be slightly different, and that's always changing too, but there are some core values that apply across the board. And one is always be selling. We've both been doing this for a long time. Some things that seem obvious to us might not be. A lot of you have experience, some of you may not, so sorry if we're stating the obvious sometimes. What we decided to do was have a little bit of she said, he said, in order to relate how a salesperson's version of a pitch applies to your pitches when you're pitching rights. So we'll have a bit of Q&A, a bit of conversation. There'll be time for questions at the end, but if you want to ask during, speak up. So, Saffron, my first question is, how do you prepare for a pitch?
Well, I thank you for asking. So I would put it down to the two R's, research and relationships. So those are something that just basically you have to have. So when I'm preparing for a pitch for whether it's for Indigo or Costco or for Book City, I do a ton of research. Like obviously we meet with our publishers. They give us as much information as they have or as they are able to, but we spend a lot of time researching. So one of the benefits that you guys have as publishers is that you know your books a million times better than I do as a salesperson, and hopefully your rights people will know those books as well as you do. So we do a lot of reading, we do a lot of research. Again, BookNet, we spend a lot of time on BookNet looking for comps. Comps are super critical, especially when a publisher, or sorry, our booksellers or librarians might not know who the author is or are unfamiliar with the topic. So BookNet is a fantastic friend. I also spend a lot of time, and I do this with a bit of grain of salt, but reading Goodreads, because that is sort of, I do take it, as I said, with a grain of salt, but sometimes I can just get some great one-liners from there, from what other people have to say. It's not just coming from the publisher or from me. And sometimes you can tell if it's out even early enough, there's some buzz building. Also, I do look at Amazon too, just to see, again, for authors' previous sales, sort of where it is. When I'm selling to an independent, I would never, ever, 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 ever mention Amazon. I wouldn't say, oh, this is #1 on Amazon, because they're stealing all your sales. Like, that would be totally inappropriate. However, for you guys, that would obviously be a very good thing. So some good comps that I look for are the author's previous work, book with a similar feel. We're presented a first novel today. We're in the middle of pre-sales right now. We were presented a first novel today, and the publisher told us she couldn't, that the author doesn't have any previous work, but it's one of her favorite books she's ever read, and I do believe her, and she compared it to The Interesting. So that's great, because that book totally nails it. So we're able to use that for an unknown authors to compare it to something that is obviously very successful and there's no previous track record for that. So I think we have to keep in mind, I think I heard someone, the previous speaker say this, that, not to inundate them with information. So we spend a lot of time really honing that pitch. Our buyers at, at Book City, I can probably present to them 700-800 titles a day. So, and at times all the different other sales reps they see. That's you really got to hone it, and you really got to get the information. So spending a lot of time doing research. The other part is a little bit more long-term, and it really is about relationships. So, I mean, I've been doing this for almost 30 years. But many buyers don't believe that the person that's pitching to them is actually putting their needs first at all. And I think it's really important for us to, selling isn't just me going, blah, 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 you buy this book, but it really is a conversation and a dialogue. So to have some really good understanding of what your buyer is wanting and is what their needs are is really important, because that's why they're there. You just need to maintain those relationships and develop them. And again, it doesn't necessarily, it can happen over a short period of time if there's some instant bonding, but you really do need to, you're going to be selling to them the next season and the next season and the next year. So you've got to maintain those relationships. What about you, Peter? How do you prepare for a pitch?
All of those things, obviously. I think in the case of what you guys are all going to be doing, which is pitching rights to foreign publishers, you want to keep in mind, sure, something might be selling really well here. Say it's a book on a band. Does that band sell in Germany? Are they popular there? We know David Hasselhoff is. We don't know why. But does your next big boy band book resonate with that customer? Look up sales, if possible, in the country of the company you're pitching to. Know what their strengths are and what they do well with, so you can pitch the right books to them.
Going back to the relationship again, one of my former Indigo buyers said to me that all things being equal, so if you both have the same, if the buyer is being pitched 2 container gardening books, they will go with the person they like. So if it's the same price, it's the same format, it's pretty much all things the same, but they will defer to someone who they like more.
Yep.
It's just human nature.
For sure.
So how do you actually do a pitch, Peter?
Yep, so again, we should have consulted a bit more, because I'm going to talk about some things that Saffron just mentioned. But once you've done all your prep, which is really important, more so than ever in our world, it's time to make the pitch. You're going to share all the info you've gathered, all the research you've done, present it to your prospective buyer. Information is key. Intelligent, targeted, concise information is even more important because it's really about how you present it. I'm going to meander a little bit and talk about relationships again, but I will circle back to something a bit more concrete. Like Saffron said, where I've found the most successes in sales through my whole career is in cases where I've built those relationships. They do make the difference between buying your book over someone else's. There are tons of like books out there. So, especially in nonfiction, fiction's even harder to pitch, so make them like you. How do you do that? Ask them questions about themselves. Ask them about their sons, daughters, whatever. Everyone likes being asked about themselves. Some of you won't even know your potential client. Some of you will. Regardless, I'd say don't just shake their hand and launch into your pitch. Take the time out to, ask them a few questions, get comfortable. Getting to know them in this way is maybe more important than the content of the book that you're selling. And again, the relationship will start there, or it already exists, but it's going to serve you well for future pitches and future meetings. The other thing is be enthusiastic. The fair is long, arduous. Buyers are as tired as you. It's not easy, or sorry, it is easy to get complacent and bored. As a publisher, imagine how they feel. They're being inundated for days straight with books and books and books and books that they probably won't even remember at the end of the day. So focus on your moment. Make your book stand out and stand up against other books. Find a way to make them remember it and be excited. Your excitement will become infectious and it will get them excited about your books.
True story. One rep told me that her sales pitch was so boring one time, she and the buyer both fell asleep in the middle of it.
I've heard that. I've heard
See,
that
it must be
happen.
true, right?
Yeah, that happens more often than I think any of us would want to admit. Along the same lines, don't be too serious. I mean, be personable. Jokes aren't always going to translate into another language, but laughter is good regardless. And be authentic. No one wants that hard door-to-door salesman vacuum pitch. How do you do this? Read your customer. If you're pitching a book and the buyer's eyes are glazing over, they're clearly not interested, don't beat that dead horse. Move on to the next one. There will be other buyers for that book. And you only have a short period of time. And to that end, so in talking about your product, you really want to hone those saleable points. No one wants to hear a detailed rundown of the plot of a book. Don't spend too much time on what I would call an editorial presentation. Mm-hmm. Be concise, and a good way to do that, and in sales I think we all kind of do this, is to come up with the why to buy list. This is, say, 3 points about your book or books that will convince your buyer why they should want to buy it, why it will sell for them. So if you have an author with a ton of awards behind them, there's a point. If you have a new author, then you're going to talk about all the buzz from early reads and so on. If a book has sold 10,000 copies in Canada, that's a why to buy. Do you have more?
Yeah. So thank you for that, Peter. One thing that I think we're very fortunate about in this industry, about making presentations, they always say, you got to make it sticky. You got to have a story to tell. Well, that's what we all have. We all have stories. So we're instantly sort of in a really, really great place. So elevator pitches are so important. I mean, sometimes a lot of times I only have 30 seconds to sell a book, and it's really important to work on that, and we do, and it's some really important information that we can get from our publishers. This sounds like an obvious thing, but tell the truth. We had, I had a publisher one time, a long time ago, who, first novel, they were like, oh yeah, this is great, and I'm like, fantastic, you know, I'll sell it to the Indigo buyer, and then he came back and told me, oh my God, you're not gonna believe this, but we've got a first blurb from Maya Angelou and John Irving. I'm like, what? So of course I'm like sending that off to Judith Chan, the Indigo buyer, and she's like, wow, that's really impressive, like, who would have thought the thing? And then 3 days later, the publisher comes back and said, that was a big lie. The author told him that they had all these amazing quotes. I forwarded on to Judith. I mean, Judith, God bless, is totally great. And she was like, whatever. She's seen it all before, so she didn't hold it against me or the publisher. She didn't order the book, but tell the truth for sure. So I know we all get very excited about when we're selling. The other thing is don't assume anything. So especially me of a certain age and a lot of us in this room, I know I was presented a book yesterday where the author was, or the subject matter was Sam Steele. Now we're in downtown Toronto, so not everyone in downtown Toronto is Sam Steele. So it was a Western publisher, and she was going on about Sam Steele. I'm like, okay, you need to just stop, because who here knows who Sam Steele is? Right, so there you go. So he is sort of a frontierman. He was one of the founding members of the RCMP, so he's a real cowboy and great. So, but not everyone knows that, so you can't assume anything. We had another book presented. The co-authors are Robert Bringhurst and Jan Zwicky, who we all know and love. But again, our young people, the people we're buying to, especially in international markets, aren't going to know everything. I work with people that have never heard of ABBA. Like, really? So we just can't assume anything. I know, it's crazy. I also think that blurbs are super, super important. So another, can you tell we're in the middle of pre-sale? So I've got all these publishers' things in my brain. So another book was presented to us yesterday, and it was like about an environmentalist from the 1920s. He's this old white guy. I'm like, boring, sleep, sleep, sleep. And then all of a sudden, the publisher's like, well, just so you know, we're going to have a foreword by Prince Charles and an intro by Jane Goodall. I'm like, cha-ching! And then that really makes a difference, right? Like, so having those blurbs for subjects and topics that we don't necessarily know about, they really make a difference. And sometimes that's even all you need. It's like, well, you got a foreword by, maybe not Prince Charles, but Jane Goodall, like, that's fantastic. Like, that's taken that whole book totally up a notch. I love being sold to. I don't know about you. Like, when I go to a restaurant or when I go to a department store, I love being sold to, because I really pick up tips from, you know, when people are selling to me and they're doing it badly. I'm like when I tried to buy a car with my husband and I went out to buy a car, and the dealership person was just talking to the man, or talking to my husband, and my husband was just like, why are you talking to me? This is my wife's car. And he's like, it's her money. So of course we immediately walked out of that dealership and we didn't buy. And then, you know, if I'm in a place where, like, if I get really good service, I will make a point of telling that person, you know, you did a great job. You are great at sales. So I'm always looking, no matter where I am, to improve my skills and to even sell better. And another thing that drives me crazy is condescension. So again, I did not make fun of all of you that never heard of Sam Steele before. So you don't assume that people know who because you're actually making someone feel pretty crappy if they don't know who Sam Steele is. So you know, it's just like say, oh, I can't believe you don't know who I get that all the time when I'm being sold to, and just really try to keep that tone out of your voice, because in sales, we've always got to be positive.
Yeah, and always sort of filling in those gaps in informing and educating along with your pitch, because that's going to, the more they know about something they might not know about, the more they'll be interested, the more you tell them.
And one tip I always forget, and I keep reminding myself, is when you're starting your presentation, say the title of the book. I know that sounds really obvious, but again, going through sales conferences, and we hear like so many books. So we're listening to this one book today, and she was talking for about, you know, and we're using Catalyst, and you know, it's slow, we're trying to get on the things. She was talking for about 2 minutes. I'm like, what are you talking about? Start with the title. Sounds very obvious, but start with the title.
And I think a lot of people are really visual. So the more visuals you can bring to a meeting, the better. Covers, obviously. Even if it's not final, it's something that they're going to look at and it'll stick in their mind. Interiors are even better. This is for illustrated books, obviously, but even for strictly literary books, a cover, the Canadian cover, keeps it in their mind. So you've made your pitch, and I think rarely are you sealing a deal right then and there at Frankfurt. So once you've done your pitch, another one of the most important things is follow-up. And it's important for us in our jobs, and I think it's probably even more important when you're selling rights to publishers in different countries speaking different languages. So what do you do to follow up?
Well, I have this in my office. I don't have a lot of things stuck up in my office, but because we are in sales and that's all we do, we don't do distribution or publicity or anything, but you know, part of, and again, what you guys are doing is always looking, you know, to sell your rights to people, but, and I've sent this out to my staff and I've sent it out to some publishers, but it's sales statistics. Like in terms of following up and actually closing deals. So I'm not going to read you the whole thing. I'm happy to send this to Catherine if you guys want it. It just blows my mind. So when you've met with somebody, so in our world, because like in our world when we have the gift show, or if we've got leads, because we get leads all the time, you need to follow up within 24 hours. Like probably when you're back from the fair, but don't be waiting a week. Don't be waiting, you know, 3 or 4 days. You need to follow up ASAP. So this doesn't apply to our company. 48% of salespeople never follow up with a prospect. 25% of salespeople make a second contact and then stop. 12% of salespeople make a third contact and stop. Only 10% of salespeople make more than 3 contacts. So the flip side of that is 2% of the sales are made on the first contact, 3% of sales are made on the second contact, 5% of sales are made on the third contact, and 80% of sales are made on the 5th to 12th contact. So I found that on the internet, so it must be true. But I do think there's a huge amount of, the longer you wait to follow up, the colder that the lead gets. So it's, again, the onus is on us. And again, you have to sort of be, you know, you don't want to be a jerk about it. You don't want to be too aggressive, and it's that fine balance, and hopefully you know your customer. But again, follow up, you know, you've put all this work, you've spent all this money, spent all this time. So follow up is so just do it. So put it in your schedule, make sure you do the follow up.
Yeah, and follow up also with any materials that they asked for that you didn't have at your meeting. It's a great way to follow up if you can, you know, send something extra that you didn't have, some more interiors. In the case of Frankfurt 2020, if you're selling a fiction book or even nonfiction, have a first chapter translated into the language that your publisher speaks so that they can actually get a feel for whether the book is actually as good as you say. And this isn't necessarily about follow-up, but flexibility. You've got your book that works for your market. Their market's totally different. If they want a different cover, make that happen to seal the deal. Like little things like that, I think are important.
Catherine asked us if we had any sort of successful pitches, and of course all of my pitches are successful, but one that really stuck out was a book that the University of Alberta came out with, just released about a month ago, from Heather O'Neill. It's part of the Chrysler Lecture Series, and they've done a number of them before with Margaret Atwood, Lawrence Hill, Joseph Boyden. They're pretty cool. So anyways, this one, I had an opportunity to read it before, and they're short. I like short books because I can read them quickly. And it was called Invaluable Wisdom, wisdom in nonsense and valuable lessons from my father. So I was totally stoked about this book because the author had given, or the publisher had given me an advance copy. I read it, and then when I got to I thought about it a lot. I did my research. Obviously, Heather O'Neill is a big name, and she does sell. I was able to go back and look at, again, using BookNet, looking at comps, all that kind of stuff, and gather a really fantastic pitch that when I met with a buyer at Indigo, I basically summed it all up into shit my dad says for Canada. And on that book, I was excited about it. I conveyed my enthusiasm to the Indigo buyer. So for my, I had suggested a buy of 1,000, and they ended up taking 3,000 copies of that book. And we worked on the cover with them. So to me, that was all about, again, getting back to the 2 R's of research and relationships. He knew me enough and knew me well enough that I was able to, he was able to trust me. And then when he actually read the book, he's like, yeah, you were right. Like, let's do this. So it's in the stores now. Hopefully it'll sell. Hopefully you guys will go and buy one. But that was sort of, I think, one of my most successful recent pitches. And it's a lot of fun. And you want to do a good job for your publisher.
Yeah, it is fun when you actually make that thing happen. And I wouldn't say 100% of my pitches are always amazing. Sometimes when I don't do the things that we're talking about, they're not as great as they could have been. But in terms of examples for me, I have a book from a publisher. It's making slime, which, if you don't know, it's a huge thing right now with tween-age girls. And essentially, the book I had was sort of a drop-in to the season, so it was never in a catalog. It wasn't first to market. It was about twice as expensive as the other books coming, or the ones that are out. And by basically being enthusiastic and also utilizing the author's platform, their social media platform, the fact that she was Canadian, and just the general enthusiasm, it ended up as Indigo's top 10 Kids of the Year book. And it's gone on to sell twice as much as the other books that are half the price. Also by big celebrity slime
people.
Another thing, another example would be, say, a barbecue book. Every year, Indigo chooses one big barbecue book for their Father's Day promotion. And they usually go with a big name or a big brand, like Weber's. So last year I had one that had neither a big name nor a big brand. It was kind of generic, actually, by an author that didn't have an amazing track record on previous books. So my pitch was, it's by 6 authors, each from different regions of America with different techniques. I think this could be your barbecue book of the year. The enthusiasm, the getting them on board with my enthusiasm, and it did become the one barbecue book that was the center of their entire Father's Day promotion. So even when you don't have the best product or the best assets, taking the assets you do have, pointing to their strength and their difference from the usual, that's also been successful for me.
So, do you have any bonus tips there, Peter?
I do. So at Frankfurt, and again, it comes back to relationships and always be selling. There are lots of opportunities to network at Frankfurt. Even though it's been a long day at the fair, surely there is a reception. We all go to them. It's where the free drinks are. It's also where your prospects are going as well, a lot of the time. So this is not the situation to give them another hard sell, but rather than hanging out with all your colleagues and talking about your day, seek out these prospects and over a drink, chat them up again. Build that relationship, remind them who you are. That'll remind them of your books one more time, and sort of keeps the dialogue going beyond your 30 minutes at the fair.
One thing I beg everybody to do, again, I asked my publisher, well, I haven't, I'm going to send them a big nasty email about this tomorrow, but when you're talking, again, specifically when you're working with your potential clients, and you're talking about a specific book, always, always, always put the title and the ISBN in the subject line. Again, they're getting so many books, like why are you making your customers do the extra work for them when you're looking at a specific book? So that, I think, is super important. Also, again, sounds so obvious, but I've had a number of buyers tell me this. Personal hygiene, people. Make sure that you are looking professional and you're spiffy and you don't smell, because that it can be a bit of an issue with some buyers, and that is an instant turnoff. And you certainly don't want to end your amazing relationship on, or meeting on such a crappy note. True story. Yes.
Top tip.
Yeah. Brush your teeth.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty much all we have. If anyone's got any questions, now is your chance. Unless we have told you everything that you need to know.
We're afraid to ask.
Oh, yes. Yes.
It can be hard to do it, Frankfurt, at the end of the day, so you still smell good. But
Your personal hygiene? Yeah. Probably not a lot of air, right?
That's why they make travel size
Yeah.
everything.
Body spray.
I have a question. Do you feel that when you're training your respective colleagues about pitching, are there, aside from the tips that you've given us, is there one key thing that you always say you really need to make sure you're doing this? I mean, you talked about sort of smelling and looking nice, and firm handshake and all that sort of stuff. But is there anything else? It's just research. It's just a combination of the things that you talked about.
No, we're training somebody right now, and one of my big things is don't take it personally, right? Like if you do get rejected, and I remember Nick Pashley, former buyer at the University of Toronto bookstore, very famously said to me, his job isn't saying yes, his job is saying no. Like he would say, because he would also buy 90%, he would buy all of the academic publishers, like everything. So he probably only bought about 10% of his books. And if you're going to take that personally, if you're going to be upset about that, then you're definitely not in shouldn't be in this line of business. So don't take it personally when they've got other things that they want to look at and bring in that's right for them.
Yeah. And I mean, mine kind of goes back to what I said earlier, and that is just be authentic. Be yourself as a salesperson. Don't try to put on anything. Goes back to the honesty. I think that's what people appreciate, is knowledge, honesty, and authenticity. And enthusiasm.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering, you were talking a lot about preparing for the meetings, like aside from preparing content-wise, do you also take into consideration cultural differences, like you pitch differently to someone from Germany than to someone from Japan or the UK or wherever, or does that not?
Well, you definitely have to be a chameleon, like absolutely. I remember one time taking an author around to about 10 bookstores in Toronto, and I thought I was gonna have an aneurysm by the end of it, because with every different person, whether it's a cultural difference or just a person difference, you're a different person to that person, because you have to adapt to them, like being the salesperson. So the bookseller can be who they are, the publisher or the rights person, but I am constantly adapting my pitch, my body language, my dress, like how I dress, depending on who I'm selling to. Like when we're Indigo, we fancy it up, and when we're at Book City, we're wearing jeans, because that's just appropriate. But we're always adapting.
Yeah, and that's where, I mean, that's part of your research, is researching the countries that you're selling to, both for how you're going to act to them and how you're going to pitch your book, and what details are going to be important for that particular client or potential client.
Well, you did a great job, Peter.
Yes,
Thank
did
you
you.
very much.
Good sales.
Awesome. Way to go.
Thank you, everyone.
Well, I would definitely definitely concur. That was just fabulous. Your enthusiasm for selling obviously comes through very strongly. So thank you both, Peter and Saffron. It was really informative and lots of great information. So it is nearing on 4:15, which is really the wrap up to the day. And we're just going to be a few minutes before our reception comes into the room. But I just want to thank you, first of all, to all the presenters for your passion and for sharing the benefit of your experience. You've so generously shared your time and your experience here today, and we're all the beneficiaries of it. Huge thanks to you, the publishers, the attendees, for coming and making this part of your day. We hope you leave informed, full of new ideas and ways of working as you consider participation, if you have not already done so, at an upcoming Frankfurt Book Fair. And as has been said, don't leave it until 2020 to consider to get there. To Claudia, Eva Marie, and Kevin, who've traveled far to be with us, huge thanks. We've learned a lot, and we appreciate your mental capacity to be with us despite the distance. Maria Antis was to be here and meet to provide one-on-one consulting about the German market with those who expressed interest. For you, make sure you're sure to meet Victoria Reich, if she can wave her hand. She's organized these meetings and will be present tomorrow to ensure success as you hook up through Skype. We are making use of the technology, so the meeting with Maria will still take place. It's just that she wasn't able to be here physically, so we're grateful for that. And a reminder that those meetings will be taking place upstairs, room 1080. You take the green elevator, which is just sort of out this main lobby around one of the banks. The elevators here are all very well colored to indicate which one you take, and so you take that upstairs to the 10th floor. But just to be sure, I would ask that you just make sure that you meet up with Vic as she's known. Is that fair to say?
And those of you who have meetings with Eva Maria, it's still on in room 1080 as well.
Okay, great. Okay, so just a final housekeeping. A survey will be en route tomorrow morning to take full advantage of your heads that are equally full right now. We want to make sure that we can get your feedback and comments, good, bad, and indifferent to the day. That's especially important to us as the organizers, but also you'll appreciate for the OMDC, our generous sponsor, who also wants to make sure that they're hearing from you about the value of this day. So, and I'm pointing to you.
Oh, yes.
Sorry.
And on that survey, you can also indicate if you're interested in having a one-on-one with Catherine Mitchell on rights mentoring. And I also want to take this opportunity, obviously, to thank Catherine for all her work in putting today together. Couldn't have done it without you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jilly. That was not why she had to stand up, was to thank me, but it was really to talk about the mentoring. So that was something, and for those who are interested, I will be at the Bologna Book Fair next week, so those would be sessions that would take place sometime in April. I would like, because we've had a room full of, obviously, publishers, many of whom know each other, but there have been a lot of other attendees, as we say, who've been part of the group, and so I would just like you to wave as your name is called, just to make sure that, I know not everyone can stay for this reception, but for those who haven't yet had an opportunity. So to the OMDC, Ontario Media Development Corporation, Karen, Christine, would you wave when you're handing us? Aaron, and so Karen, I'm sorry, of course, had to leave. And Janet, our faithful Janet, thank you so much, all of you, for sponsoring this day. You are such a committed partner for book publishers in Ontario. Your support is incredible. It's great to have your special guest, Julia Pratt, from Ontario's office in Munich. So there's Julia in the back. To our special guests in from Ottawa. Oh, yes. Sorry. Yes, special, absolutely. To our special guests in from Ottawa, Alison Laren. She had to take a call? Okay. Meredith Quayle from DCH Frankfurt 2020 office out of, I guess that's Gatineau, not Ottawa, right? Okay. Great. And Julie Fairweather from the Canada Book Fund. Okay. All right. So when those two women walk in, if you have not already met them, please introduce yourself, but we're delighted to have you here. Gabrielle Echeverry from Livre Canada Books in Ottawa. Joanne Gerber at the Canada Council for the Arts, who you've had a chance to have a quick wave to. Her colleague Megan Maybe is going to be joining us at the reception, and Megan is with the Cultural Arts Abroad. Is that correct? Regular, okay, yes. And Joanne, of course, is here for the newly launched, very exciting international translation, and everyone's looking forward to hearing more about that. De Montréal, Caroline Fortin, president of FBM 2020. Oh, there she is at the back, beautiful green. Isabelle Gauvin, project coordinator, Frankfurt FBM 2020. Huge thanks to you, Isabelle. Merci beaucoup. From here in Toronto, Holly Kent. Holly is there, she at the back of the room, OBPO. Kristen Thomas from the LPG. Oh, she's outside. It's a popular group. I don't know what they're doing there. They're not smokers, I know that. Kate Edwards from the ACP, also on the call, okay. Are you sure the bar didn't get open there somewhere else? Emily Kellogg, then I presume, is also from the ACP, is on that call. So, way to go. The hardworking ones, okay. And also to Heidi from the BC Book Publishers Association. So Heidi, please wave higher. They can't see you. Hi, hi. Okay, thank you for joining us, and thank you all, these groups, for your support and attendance, because it was through you that we were able to achieve this incredible, if we were charging for it, it would have been a sellout. But and in fact, there was a moment when we thought we might have to deal with oversubscription and fire codes. But fortunately, a couple people weren't able to make it. So a small thank you from me to Fred Cheatham at Friesens for the big little books, those little red ones that are all filled now with notes from the day. Those were something that Fred was very happy to provide. My personal thanks to Lauren Stewart at BookNet, who's not here, but she and her has been invaluable in helping in so many ways, particularly with the logistics of a venue like this, and she happily provided book bags to our guests, presenters, so I thank you for that. And leaving the best for the last, to Gillian Fizet of Frankfurt FBM 2020. This is all you're doing. Merci beaucoup. So now, in a moment, I was going to say now we raise a glass, but I think it'll just take a minute. Normally the catering staff has been fairly ahead of us on things, so if you'll just bear with it, you'll hear the moment when the drinks are in the room, and this is an opportunity for people to, as I say, traditionally raise a glass, something that obviously has been mentioned by some of the more serious imbibers in the room. But anyway, thank you all so very much, and enjoy the rest of the day. So, yes, thank you.